Gentlemen, the time has come once again to discuss things.
Let's go! Okay then, gamers. Just wanted to say thanks for joining us on this epic episode of Geeky Gentlemen. I'm your host, Alfie the Geek, and this is joining me, a little guy from Emerald Island.
You have to do that voice the whole time. This is that Matt kid, by the way.
Wait, I have to do this voice, but you just... Okay, no, we're putting a cap on that one. I will actually end up stabbing you in the eyes if I have to keep doing that for all that. As you can tell by hastily improvised Gotta Go Fast intro, we're going to be talking about everyone's favorite blue blur this episode. And kind of a nebulous topic, because it's not going to be about a specific Sonic thing. We're going to be talking about the Sonic franchise as a whole, the current state it's in, the different states it's been, and where we kind of expect it to go. We're recording this... Was Sonic's birthday yesterday? It was this week, right?
Yeah, it was this week.
Yeah, so it's kind of timely. It's kind of... It's kind of timely. We're close to an anniversary, and there's bound to be a new announcement relatively soon. So I figured now is probably the best time as any to kind of lead off with after the Forces, after Mania, and All-Star Racing is probably the last game we've had, right?
Yeah, I mean, you had, Sonic Forces, Sonic Mania, All-Stars Racing. Those are kind of the main things that have come out since then. Outside of that, it's been mostly just, obviously the comics are still going and things like that. But there haven't really been any new game announcements. He's kind of in a state of limbo right now after Sonic Forces received such I don't know, what would you say, mixed, middling reception?
Yeah, middling seems the way, because review-wise, it did. Let me actually do a quick little look up. But from what I remember, it didn't actually. We weren't in like Unleashed 06 territory or Boom. So let me do IGN review Sonic Forces, because IGN's always the most trustworthy. 6.9. Okay, 69. So yeah, middling seems to be the description. Sonic Forces came out to kind of a wet fart, which is, I think, is more damaging because it came out so close to Mania, and that brief period. And when Mania came out and Sonic Forces was about to come out, was probably the most hype I've ever seen the Sonic fandom in just terms of like hopefulness. They were like, oh yeah, we're getting Generations 2. They've got classic Sonic back, but oh well, the gameplay is going to be just as good. We've got all of this going on, and Mania kind of blew everyone's expectations. It was the first time in decades that Sonic had actually got like a high review, like not just like, oh, this game is good, but like 10 out of 10s with Mania. So that was like euphoria, and then when Forces came out, it was kind of middling, and then as that gap has increased, I know I've been noticing, and we think we've talked about this, that this just kind of kept plummeting, where like people's opinions on Forces and what it represents, and this kind of period we're in with Sonic. Post, I guess, Lost World is this kind of era. You could take it back even to Colors.
Yeah.
This is kind of where people are going really to sour on it and want something new and something different. So to explain to anyone who hasn't really been in that fandom, Matt, how do you feel about... Because Colors was the first game we've got these new writers. I apologize, I don't remember their names. Matt, if you do, you could help me there. But this is where we've moved tonally from Sonic, and Unleashed was kind of the last shonen-esque Sonic game we've had.
It's really interesting that you you phrase it that way. One of my absolute favorite YouTubers, some call me Johnny. He's pretty well known in the Sonic fan base. He recently did an updated review of Sonic Colors, and that's exactly the way he put it. He's like, this is where you get the transition from a shonen anime to a Saturday morning cartoon. And I think that really Sonic Colors forward, it's been kind of this, I don't know. It's hard for me. It's not really appealing to what I gravitated to Sonic for as a kid, but at the same time, at least they've put out reasonably good quality platforming games and things like that. It's just that now we've gotten to this point where, well, they're not capturing that silly over-the-top shonen anime vibe that people kind of came to it for back in the early 2000s, but at the same time, they're now also not making good games either. Mm-hmm. Like, from Colors to Half of Unleashed to, or I guess whatever. So like with Colors, Unleashed, Generations, you had this momentum going. That momentum came screeching to a halt with Sonic Lost World, which some people swear by. Don't get me wrong. Some people really like Sonic Lost World. I think it's fine. I think it's gameplay wise, I think it's interesting, not great, but it's fine. And then they started building up that, trying to build up that momentum again. And that's what we all kind of thought Forces was going to do was get us back on the train tracks to success. And then honestly, Forces was bad. It's garbage. I actively think Forces is one of the worst games they've put out in a while, just for how lazy it is. And it's interesting because I've seen this like backlash in the Sonic fan community against people like in their minds hating on Forces. They're like, oh, everyone's being mean to Sonic Forces. Everyone's being unfairly critical. And it seems to me like in some places of the Sonic fan community, being critical and calling out bad and lazy design is the same thing as just hating the franchise. And it's like, I've never hated a Sonic game out of anything but wanting the franchise to be better. And yeah, personally, I would love to see them go back to the slightly more kind of silly, over-the-top shonen anime style of writing, as cringe as some of that stuff is to go back to today. But I think if you approached it with with better writers behind the behind the keyboards, not that these writers aren't good, but I'm just saying they're obviously not going for that. But if you went for that tone with potentially more oversight on kind of making sure the story works and things like that, I think we could get back to that. It's just whether or not Sega has any interest in doing that, because at this point, after Sonic Forces didn't do well, I just don't know what they're gonna do.
Mm-hmm. And that's what I think is interesting about that is because of this new tone shift, and like you say, you can kind of point to two distinct eras. I think a rebuttal some other people might say is, well, what about the classic games? What would you define those as? Where they were kind of light on story, and would you even say they had a specific tone? And to that, I personally would say they feel very much in the same vein as the adventure games and the Adventure 2, even something like 06. That Heroes is kind of the one middle example where it's more child-friendly, but it also isn't in that kind of self-deprecating humor that we've moved into now. That is probably the most like Saturday morning Sonic, at least for that time period. Now our version of Saturday morning Sonic with like Sonic Boom, it's a completely different type of humor, and I actually really love how Sonic Boom handles it. But I think it's different when for a game versus like something that is meant to be a comedy show. So you look at the classic games and how they stick to that trend. You've got a very simple Sonic has to save his friends from the evil enemy, but you've got like hidden prophecies, you've got the rival character, you've got the mechanized robot version, you've got time travel, you've got the kid sidekick, you've got ancient civilizations on a forgotten island, and all these other laws. Like, classic Sonic doesn't speak, but there is a anime as hell story going on in those games, especially if you get like CD is literally the anime intro is done by the same Toei Animation does Dragon Ball Z. Like there is a clear link there between what Sonic was inspired by and that type of young adult storytelling. So when it gets to voice acting and to adventure, it feels like a natural evolution. There doesn't feel like there's a strict tone shift. The biggest one you could say is once they start bringing out the guitars and the modern music and the vocal songs. That I think you can say is, okay, maybe we are going even further now, but it's still on a direct path. It's just further along that path. Now, we do feel like we've like splintered off on a different tree branch where Generations, I feel like as an anniversary game, you can kind of like, oh yeah, this is just a tour of the past. So like that tone of storytelling fits a little bit more for like that one-off. We're just gonna put some in-jokes at ourselves. We're gonna show off the characters and have Sonic talk to every single one of his friends and get a little the chemical plant. Like it works. It feels like a celebration. But once you move to Forces, you've taken the attitude of Sonic and his own failings and his own personality to the point where he'll make jokes, but then he also won't. Like, I think the key scene is in Forces where Sonic's been tortured for months, apparently.
Yeah.
And he comes out and he's just quipping, and then at the end, he doesn't feel like a character at that point. And something to get to the larger point of what I'm talking about, the state of the franchise. Sonic as a brand seems so different than that specific game, because if you look at how the movie handles him, the movie everyone was shitting on, even the movie gets that Sonic putting on the cocky persona and stuff, that has to come away sometimes, and he's vulnerable and he's got something, and that is a super child friendly movie. Sonic flosses in that film, like that is very much. It's not a mature movie, but it has an understanding of this. The character of Sonic is meant to emphasize and relate to kids in this way. Kids can't relate to. I don't want to speak for kids, but like when I was a kid, I couldn't relate to the people who never stopped joking, the people who never had a moment of fear, or like again, classic Sonic. One of the first things they do to distinguish him from other platformers, he stares at the camera, he'll say, "I'm out of here," or when he goes to the edge, he'll freak out and look scared and look like he's about to fall. You don't get that with Colors Sonic onwards. You don't get that idea that he will ever fall, and I think for the state of Sonic the Hedgehog as a character and the fan base that he's grown, I do legitimately feel like that's why they're so vocal, because the majority of Sonic fans came to the character because he was one of the only video game mascots that had such a defined personality. So when that is changed, people react vehemently against it. Mario is Mario. No matter what game you put him, no matter how much you give him, he's in that nebulous state of like perfect iconography, and it works wonderful for him. But Sonic, I feel like, I won't say it's a misstep, but because they initially tried to be ambitious, whenever they don't, it's noticeable.
For sure. I mean, people like to talk all the time about how Sonic doesn't need a cast of characters. He doesn't need friends. It's all about the simple platforming. It's like, well, every game in the classic series introduces new characters, every single one of them. Sonic 2 gives you Tails. Sonic 3 gives you Knuckles, who thinks Sonic is a bad guy because Eggman lied to him. Like, it's crazy complicated. And then you get to Knuckles Chaotix, you get to Sonic CD, like you said. This has always been there. It's always been a part of the franchise. And so to have, the developers scale it back to where you're just playing as Sonic and it's a really super simple story, and to then act like that's going back to his roots and that's like a return to form, it's unbelievably frustrating. And it's not really what anyone in the fandom of the franchise wants. It, to me, always felt like they were just trying to cater to mainstream reviewers and things like that. That's what it always felt like to me once we started going really, really simple with the story. And don't get me wrong, I'm glad that they were able to focus on gameplay, because I mean, I want the Sonic games to be, a great story in a video game is great, but if the game's an absolute miserable slog to play, then that would, not really take you very far. So don't get me wrong, I'm glad that they've really honed in and tried to find a play style that works for Sonic in 3D. But it's unfortunate, even the ends and half of Unleashed and Colors can be really fun to play. They don't give me what I came here for. Really, the only thing that is out right now that gives me what I want out of my Sonic is the Archie, or not the Archie, but the Archie and then the IDW comics. Those are the only things that I open it up and I'm just like, yes, this is what I'm here for. And that probably puts me in the minority, at least in terms of, mainstream, just casual Sonic players. But it's definitely frustrating because I don't know that they're ever going to try to return to that tone, because they arguably kind of did in Forces. I mean, Forces has certainly a more complicated plot than we've seen in the last handful of 3D titles. They are a band of freedom fighters who are fighting against Eggman. It's almost like we're calling back to Sad AM and the original setup for the Archie stories. So I mean, it's not like they don't get that people want that, but then you play that game and it feels like no one really committed, and it feels like it was just kind of half-heartedly put together, just being honest. And it's very frustrating because there's so much passion and love in Mania, and there was so much time and dedication put into that. And it's unfortunate that Sonic in 3D is not getting that same treatment and getting a proper return to form to what people loved about 3D Sonic.
I'm glad you mentioned the comics, because I do want to segue to that for a bit, because I feel like the game portion is going to take up the majority of this, and we can get back to that. But because you mentioned the comics, and that's had its own kind of shift, right, internally. It's almost its own beast of Sonic with its own fandom. How are you finding the current comics? And how would you say they've changed from the history of what a Sonic comic has been?
Yeah, I mean, you can look at the Sonic comics in eras, right? I mean, when Archie Sonic first started out, it's this super, super kid-friendly thing. Like, it's more kid-friendly than Sad AM. Like, it uses the Sad AM setup and the Sad AM design for the characters and the world and Robotnik and things like that.
The Mohawk Sonic.
Right, yeah. But their Robotnik acts more like Adventures Robotnik. Like, he's got the same design, but he acts more of like, they make a lot of jokes about him eating food, and there's a lot of fourth wall breaks in the original run of the comics. And then Ken Penders jumps on the comics, and the very first issue that Ken Penders writes is the issue that introduces like Evil Sonic and the mirror dimension. So that's setting a fucking tone for what your legacy is going to be on this franchise, which I think is just kind of neat.
Yeah.
Ken Penders, under his, I don't know, leadership, watchful eye, whatever, I don't know.
Watchful eye. He definitely looking pretty close.
He's looking. Under his his guidance, we saw it transition out of that sort of, this is just a kid's comic for kids, and it kind of in microcosm what the entire comic book industry went through of trying to appeal to an older demographic and things like that. That sort of happened to just the Sonic comics. Like, you can see the evolution of comics in general inside the Sonic comics almost, because you get to the late 90s in Sonic the Hedgehog comics. I think it's 90s as hell up in here. I mean, there's crazy secret societies of echidnas. There's fucking royal families and political drama, and there's romance, and there's love triangles, and people getting fucking dead. And it just got to the point of almost absurdity. And then somewhere in I want to say like the 250s, that's when head writer shifts from Ken Penders to Ian Flynn. And we also bring on Tracy Yardley as the main artist, who brings them back closer to their like adventure proportions. And then Ian Flynn is able to kind of better capture the adventure writing, but refined because he's just a better writer. And so from Ian Flynn taking over onward, there's a shift where we're starting to find kind of that balance of making it kind of the shonen anime, but still kind of almost making it feel like a Saturday morning cartoon. But he still had to deal with kind of the weight and the baggage of the years that had preceded him taking over. And so a lot of his initial run on that is trying to retcon things to make them closer to the game universe, like when he tries to retcon it so that way instead of being a ton of different like Chaos Emeralds, he gets it down to just like the 7 main ones and things like that. He does a lot. He goes through entire arcs just so that Knuckles is like, you know what? No, I'm not leaving Angel Island. I'm staying here so that way nothing bad happens. Like he goes through an entire arc just to get to that point so that way Knuckles is back on Angel Island. And then there was the lawsuit drama. He had to do a reboot. And now it's over with IDW. And I think IDW has picked up pretty naturally in terms of tone from where he left off from the reboot. And honestly, I think the current arc, I'm getting a little... I'm kind of wanting to wrap it up because I don't really care for the villains that he's using right now. But I've been ultimately fairly happy with the comics right now. I think they're hitting that kind of perfect balance that Ian Flynn is good at. Like he knows how to make it kind of feel silly and like a cartoon, but he also knows how to put genuine moments of emotion, how to take a character like Eggman, make him be both comedic and a serious threat. He knows how to take a character like Sonic and show that being a hero all the time can wear him out and show that he can be vulnerable. So, I mean, Ian Flynn, while not all of his arcs and stories are great, he knows how to treat these characters like real breathing characters. And so I've never really wanted to say anything bad about the guy because even when he's doing a story that I don't love as much as maybe some of his other stories, I still feel like there's a genuine love for this universe. And I feel like he really gets a lot of what the people who grew up on the adventure games kind of see in that stuff, if that makes any sense.
No, that makes perfect sense. I think one of the things I have with the Sonic the Hedgehog comic, and it's so strange to see it compared to other franchises, is the Sonic comic at the moment is the most stable vanilla Sonic experience you can get. Would you say that's fair to say? Like this, if you were looking for someone right now, what's the best like thing of Sonic, which is just modern but kind of just like this is what Sonic is? You'd hand them the comic over the games or anything right now, right?
Oh
like,
yeah.
Because even the best modern game, Mania, is like, well, it's meant to be a classic game. it's meant to be the fabled Lost Saturn game, which we could have had. So the fact that the comic book is the vanilla, is the standard, is both a strength and a weakness. And why I say that is because the strength of it is it gives Sonic fandom that base, that the formula works. The ideas that Sega has presented for Enforcers are not inherently bad. They are just only bad in that game. We've seen that the concept of the Resistance, the concept of all these different characters working together in like Tails and so on and forth, it can be executed well as long as it's given the care and the attention it needs. Even if it's not shooting for the stars or anything. My other issue with that, though, is as ridiculous and as crazy and as generally disgusting at times the Ken Penders era of Sonic era got, I also respected that and for me, the UK equivalent, Sonic the Comic, for actually going off-brand being a comic book and being able to tell different stories that you can't in the games. A lot of what Ian Flynn's doing for me feels like great serviceable stuff, but it also feels like filler. Like that you can't change anything because you want it to fit in the game canon. And I also kind of had this problem with like the reboots he was doing, in like the retcons you mentioned, which yes, you're making it better because a lot of those ideas were batshit, but also we're not making new ideas. We're not like he is doing great stuff with new characters. Like I really Whisper's taken off.
Oh, I love Whisper.
That's a fantastic new character. So I'm not gonna lie and say there's no form of creativity. I feel there is a ton, but I also would wonder if there are restrictions on him like that. Like you have to toe the line here. You can't take these characters to this place. I mean, it's been getting pretty dark with like the fake mecha zombie virus. So maybe those don't exist, but it's just the impression I've got.
Yeah.
Whereas like previously with Archie, it went batshit, it went crazy, but by God, you could tell that they did not give a fuck. They were just going, and I wish it's a Sonic comic, so it's hard to tell who would ever do it. But like, could you imagine in that environment where it's literally you go and do anything? If like a high comics book writer, like a real like top tier stuff, we're talking your Tom Kings, your Grant Morrisons, your whoever, was like, oh yeah, I want to do a Sonic trade, 6 issues Sonic the Hedgehog trade paperback, meant for bookstores, like high quality. This is a story. Can you imagine that? That was so good, but we never got it, and we had the Sonic comic ready for years, and they've never done it. They've never take the leap that Marvel and DC have, despite legit out of every other video game, there's no comic question, is there? Like Sonic, easily brand recognition. No, there's no question. Out of every other spin-off comic series, Sonic fucking stamps on it by far. I don't know how well these things sell, but just in terms of name, of people getting the name out there and having a tool of marketing with a constant video game series that may not always be good, but you'll be damn right it makes headlines. You'll never not know a Sonic game came out. So it really, that's the thing that gets me about that. I feel like that missed opportunity, and I'm worried that in the state we are now, we'll be content just to keep getting that. We won't be using this because it is that safe bastion. It's like, oh, the game story was bad, but comics doing good. And it's just like, if we get to the video games to a point where they are the consistent main thing again, I would like for the comics to be able to take those wilder directions again, just to experiment, just to see how far you can push these characters in a medium which doesn't have so many eyes on it. That is going to be a little bit, oh, well, this issue might not be all ages, like not in terms of like they're not going to have them fucking, but you know, just like in terms of what if Sonic got lost in the special zone, like some trippy Flash Phantom Zone type shit, like that would be crazy for an issue or something, right? Like those kind of ideas, I think would really benefit that medium. And kind of moving on to the other side, I thought that was the biggest strength of Sonic Boom, was just how much that had nothing to do with the game. The Sonic Boom cartoon show wasn't something that you would watch. Like, there were some dud episodes, but from which ones I've seen, it was consistently well written, and a lot of it was that shocked me. It wasn't just these characters making jokes, like a lot of the modern games kind of fall into. It was character-based humor from exaggerated versions of the characters for sure, but still the core is the Knuckles is gullible, Sonic's cocky, Amy's the leader, but she's also kind of got like that Achilles heel of Sonic, and Tails the only sane man in this room.
Yeah. No, I mean, and I'll go ahead and say I 100% agree with everything you said. I mean, for sure, part of it is, you know, if the games were actually giving me what I would like from the games, then I would maybe want to see the Sonic comics do more. You know, the issue with the people like to look back at the Ken Penders era and say, oh, it's so cringe, it's so bad. The issue with the Ken Penders era is not that like Sonic had romance interests, or is not that there was a lot of complicated, potentially political stuff going on. The issue is that it was all done badly, and that it was creepy at the best of times. Like when he saves Bunny Rabbit from being consumed by the AI creature, and then Bunny just like makes out with him, and then they just move on. She just like makes out with him as a thank you, and then they move on. And I'm just like, the fuck? So like the issue was never not pushing the boundaries and saying, hey, what if Sonic had a love interest, or hey, what if we maybe focused on sort of telling a more complicated story? The issue was always doing those things badly and being kind of weird about it. So I mean, I'm 100% with you. Ian Flynn's leaving as head writer.
Oh, really?
And Evan Stanley's taking over, which I'm super hyped about. She's actually mostly been an artist for most of it, but she has written for a few of the she wrote one of the Sonic Boom episodes. She wrote the Silver Age, which was a really cool mini in the Sonic Universe book, where we go to the dark future where the Enerjack has won and taken over the world, and Silver has to fight the Enerjack in the future. She wrote that. So she's taking over as head writer of the comic after the Metal Virus ends, which will be on issue like 32. So I'm actually, because Ian Flynn's he's written for like the Star Wars adventures. He got to co-write some Archie stuff with Mark Waid. So like he's kind of, I don't want to say he's moving past Sonic, but he's like going other places in his career, and I'm really happy for him. So I'm curious to see if maybe we'll get to do more fun stuff. So I don't know. I'm hopeful for the comic, but I definitely get what you're saying. It's not like the comic is ever going to be as popular as the games, so there's no reason not to kind of experiment and go a little bit farther in those areas. But I didn't mean to get us just back on that point.
Oh no, I think that's still part of it. I didn't know that, and I'm super pumped for that, because it's exactly what I wish would happen more in the main. Like we still haven't had a female writer on the main Batman book, or the main fucking like it's we have on the main Superman in like the Gail Simone, the Triangle years, but the main Batman book, no. So the fact that Sonic can actually do that, and again has more eyes on him now thanks to the movie, I think.
Oh, and I totally forgot. She got noticed because she did her Ghosts of the Future fan comic.
Oh, snap.
That's what she's most. Yeah, fuck. That's what I forgot. Evan Stanley. I'm so sorry. She did Ghosts of the Future, which is like a fucking god tier beloved Sonic fan comic. That's what got her in the door at Archie. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I felt like I had to mention that.
That's brilliant, because that's actually a big topic of this conversation. Is we are in the era of the fans taking over with Sonic.
Well, let's talk about Mania then, right? Because I mean, Mania was handled by mostly Christian Whitehead, and obviously there were plenty others, but Christian Whitehead was probably the most prominent.
And Taxman.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. He basically rebuilt the 2D Sonic physics engine from the ground up, using frame by frame analysis and just recreating it perfectly. And then they hired him to do the mobile ports of the different Sonic games. And that led to him getting the job to kind of spearheading Mania. And you look at that and you're just like, that's incredible. Like Sega looked into their community, saw someone who was doing fantastic work, and they took the opportunity to inject the love back into this. And then I look over at the people who are doing like Sonic Utopia, and I'm just like, well, what the fuck, Sega? Like, there's people out here who are ready. They're gearing to go. And every now and then the Flynn for Sonic hashtag gets passed around. Like, people would love to see Ian Flynn just write the story of one of the upcoming games.
Oh, for
Like,
sure.
the answers are there. Like, all you like, it confounds me, and I have to kind of wonder. They look at the continuing success of the comics, because even at their most not well selling, they still sell pretty well. They're a fairly popular comic, and you look at how much people want to see something like Sonic Utopia, and I like, what is stopping 2 and 2 from like adding together? And I just don't know. I mean, I can't. I don't run Sega.
I don't know either. And that, see, the thing I would have said is I would have been like, well, there's a certain level of, I don't want to say, like, how do I phrase this? There's a certain level of ownership of the property, right? This is our baby. This is our job, and if we give too much control to people, we are admitting that we are bad at our jobs and that we can't
Sure.
figure it out. And
Sure.
especially given a lot of these creators are Americans. I think that touches on something for a lot of Stadia. Like, if Sonic was an American character, I think you'd see no question. I think they'd be running the show. But because Sonic is a Japanese creation, and it is that boundary, and we have Sega of America, but even Sega of America has had infighting with Sega of Japan. That's why Sonic Extreme never happened. There's a whole thing going on. So they don't even trust themselves sometimes. So there is that. I would say, oh well, that's the reason why. It's just they don't want to put that much faith in someone, even if they've got the talent. It's a pride thing.
Mm-hmm.
But then Mania happens, and I raise an eyebrow, because not only have you given them Sonic, you've given them the most pure and universally praised, this is good, no controversy version of Sonic, and let them do a direct sequel. When you did Sonic 4, even you made sure it had the modern designs and the things, so you had an excuse if you fucked it up, that it didn't take the classics. Mania, you were like, oh no, go in, go crazy, do that. So I don't know what the hell's the thing is, because if they can do that, by how they've treated it, I can't imagine they're that much more protective of modern Sonic, right? Like, it seems like that's the one that they should have gone to first, and like the Mania would have been like, whoa, you're letting them touch a classic game? Whereas modern Sonic, it seems like you're letting every fucker, that you're letting the people who wrote Unleashed in Colors, they're American, I believe. They were like cartoon writers who didn't know how to. They had to look it up because they never heard of Sonic before, which I think with Tails particularly shows a lot. But like it's one of those things where like, okay, so you're even letting non-Japanese people write the games, and now you're letting non-Japanese people to play and like to make the classic games. So I legit do not have an answer to your question. I think it's not happening because there would have been news about it, and like people who are making Sonic Utopia are still doing Sonic Utopia. They're still posting updates, and no one's been contacted allegedly because no one would be able to keep even when that happened with Christian Whitehead, he hadn't been active for years anyway. So it kind of came out of the blue. A lot of these fan game creators are quite active on social media, so it would be quite noticeable if they were like, all right, I'm dropping off for a bit. So I don't know, man. It's
weird because they kind of tried it, right? Like, Sonic Boom was developed by Big Red Button, which is a Western developer. And it was like the first big project they'd ever had. They were only able to land it because Big Red Button has some like ex Naughty Dog people somehow. And so, with Sonic Boom, they're like, okay, it's not Sonic the Hedgehog, it's Sonic Boom. It's kind of a spin-off. We're potentially not guarding it as closely. But even if it was just a spin-off, even if it was just sort of, this is kind of the ultimate universe of Sonic, right? Like Ultimate Spider-Man, but Sonic. Even if that's how they were treating it, they still poured a lot of money into marketing, into developing the promotional materials, into hiring out for a TV series. They did a DS game that's actually not that bad. Like the DS game isn't too bad. The Sonic Boom, whatever, Shattered Crystal, I think it was. Yeah, that one's not terrible. But then like Rise of Lyric, which was like the big flagship, this is our Wii U Sonic game. They trusted it after spending all this money on marketing and rebranding for this sort of spin-off universe. They trusted it to like a first-time Western dev, and it's hot garbage. Sonic 06 makes Sonic Boom look like Sonic 06. I mean, it's that level of horrible. And so I don't know if maybe they felt burned by that. I mean, I don't know. I mean, that could be part of it too. God knows I don't run Sega. But it's not like they haven't tried or thought about it. They just did it all stupid like. I mean, I don't have an answer for what happened there, because that was kind of an attempt to revitalize the game's Western appeal. You had these 4 playable characters. They all talked to each other. There was a big emphasis on like finding this big. It almost was like kind of like a Ratchet and Clank type. Like it was like Sonic with a Ratchet and Clank story almost. And I'm like, there's like, I mean, that's not the worst direction you could go potentially. It's really hard to look at that and kind of with how Rise of Lyric turned out. It's hard to kind of look back at that and look for the potential. But I think it was there, and that could have been something. But that franchise, that sub franchise died because they trusted it to a Western dev who just. And I mean, I don't want to put all the blame on Big Red Button. I know Sonic Team and Takashi Iizuka were kind of shepherding the whole thing. So I mean, I truly do not know what happened with Rise of Lyric.
Well, that's the main. I can give you a brief rundown. Is the main reasons why that failed is it was meant to be developed for PS4, Xbox 360, Xbox One. Sorry. Sega had still signed that exclusivity deal with Nintendo, where it was going to be one Sonic game on the Nintendo console. So we got Sonic Colors, Sonic Boom, and then the DS Sonic Boom game. So that was all meant to be Nintendo. So it wasn't designed to run on Nintendo Wii U hardware, which, as you'd be aware, is infinitely less powerful than the PlayStation 4 or Xbox One. So that was already a problem. If you look back at the original reveal trailer for Sonic Boom, crazy difference already when that was running on like a PC. Then you take that, and then you also add, we got to get out by Christmas. That's the crunch. And it's like, wow, crap. So all those factors together, it's those forcing those deadlines. It's the same thing that happened to Sonic 06. Sonic 06 was meant to have another year of development. That keeps biting Sega in the ass that they make these decisions. So even then, I don't put that on Big Red Button. Those 2 things are all things that Sega did. And it's just, you deal with it.
Sure. So
that happens. But the thing that I want to talk about in relation to that, which is like, okay, so they're letting other people do the new things. What was Lost World, Matt? Why did we just detour for a hot minute and then not go back? After Generation, that's such a weird. That Lost World almost feels like it didn't happen because it's such a weird timeline-wise. It's like, all right, so you go Sonic Generations, they do the spin-off Sonic Boom, and then you do Forces. Oh yeah, it's the same gameplay, watered down a little bit. That makes sense. But no. This must be the only game series in history that's ever done. We gotta go over here for a second. Oh, that didn't work. Screech back. Oh wait, we forgot how to make the boost game too now. So it's just so funny to me. Like,
Yeah.
what do you think possessed Sega after Generations to move away from Boost and do that? Do you think it was just, wow, that was the peak of the Boost games and they want to try something different on a high note, or what?
Yeah, I mean, in retrospect, sure. I mean, the boost gameplay has never been as good as it was in Generations, or the daytime sections of Unleashed. That's boost at its peak. Colors is following those, and Forces is boost formula at a very. Forces is like what everyone says the boost formula
Yeah,
is. It's
for
really
sure.
lazy. It's not great. So in retrospect, yeah, that's kind of exactly what happened. I understand the desire to mix things up, but it's not like every time we get a new Mario game, they reinvent the very basics of platforming. But Sonic Lost Worlds has like ideas I think are cool, like the idea of like doing a bunch of wall running and like parkour and stuff like that. Because like that's my thing, and we were kind of talking about this earlier. Sonic should be cool. Like he's more of a self-deprecating kind of cartoon funny guy these days. But what the comics capture and what the earlier games capture is that Sonic should be like fucking cool. And running on walls and doing cool parkour shit is fucking cool. But at the same time, I would be hard pressed to argue against anyone who wanted to make the claim that Lost World seems like an intentional pivot in the direction of Mario, because it absolutely does. One thing that Sonic has always had over Mario is kind of the uniqueness of its level designs. Like you're never going to see something like Oil Ocean Zone in a Mario game. And then you get to Sonic Lost World. It's got the very basic like grass level, sky level, all that stuff. It's a weird beast. It's on Steam now, which is great. For people who didn't want to buy a Wii U for it. And then they even put out some like DLC where Sonic got to wear like Link's tunic and stuff.
That was cool.
And I'm
There
like,
was even like
and
a
I'm
level.
like, and like that's hype, and that's really cool. And they tried to introduce some new villains, even though the six are the Deadly Six, who are kind of the main villains of the current comic arc. They just end up coming off as really generic and lame. But I used to ask myself that all the time, because I used to, when Generations came out, there was so much hype and there was so much momentum, and for them to just slam the brakes on all of that is puzzling to me. And if they had like a fantastic idea, like if they had like this amazing, great idea that wasn't the boost formula, but it was even better, it was just as good, and it was fantastic, then sure. But like Forces, Sonic Lost World was just kind of middling and not that great. So it felt like we stopped our momentum to try to experiment for no reason. I can't think of a logical explanation, to be honest with you, but I know some people swear by it. So, I mean, it clearly worked for some people.
And I think the thing with that is just so striking is it's the fact that we never tried it again and we went back so quickly, right? With like the zero elements of it sticking is what makes it stick out to me more. Like when we did Heroes and Shadow the Hedgehog trying to change the adventure formula, where like it made it it increased the acceleration and it became a lot more slippier. When that got a negative reaction with 06, they did make an active effort to make it closer to Adventure 1 and 2. It's way slower, so they went in the wrong direction, but you can tell that they didn't throw out the baby with the bathwater with that one.
Yeah.
Since now, though, it feels like Sega's become it feels sad to say, they've become so self-conscious, because they have been ribbed to death so much. Quite unfairly, I feel like, a lot of the time. Like we all have fun joking on the Sonic games, but like 06 didn't need to get as big as it did. 06 became synonymous with bad games in the same way that BVS became synonymous with bad movie, where you just say it and people will argue over it or know what it is. It's like that level of transcendent knowledge from like Game Grumps, Angry Video Game Nerd, every YouTuber.
Yeah.
Like that was the first internet game, like, whew, like huge. And I think it affected, say, how Sega does this business forever. I think we're still recovering from that, like 14 years on, and it's ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, it was the 15th anniversary of Sonic. They put that out, and they put out Sonic Genesis, which was like a Game Boy Advance port of Sonic 1 that suffered from like crazy slowdown and screen crunch. It was like awful. And a lot of people are like, oh, 15th anniversary nearly fucking killed the guy.
Yep. So, I mean,
it's
decisions were made.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
There's been a backlash to that backlash though. Like you even see people, I've even seen like people in the Sonic fan community doing like Twitter polls. They're like, what's worse, Sonic 06 and Sonic Forces? And a lot of people do actually say Sonic Forces is worse. And I get where they're coming from, because I think the mentality is like Sonic 06 is the technically worst game. Like it was rushed, it's buggy, it's like nearly impossible to play parts of it. It is a broken mess of a game. But I think to a lot of people, and I still have to sit with this myself, it at least felt like there was some passion, and like it felt like they were trying. Like it was ambitious. Like it was ambitious, if nothing else.
If you
and
get the
maybe
closest example,
and maybe to
go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. Well, I feel like to some people maybe it feels like the last time Sega really was ambitious and tried, maybe, to them. Like it was the last thing that felt like we were still trying to do the adventure style. We were still going for it. And then Forces is technically more competent, but feels utterly passionless. And so I get why that's a kind of reoccurring debate that comes up of how bad is Sonic 06 really? Because at least it felt like there was some effort towards the fans who loved that stuff.
Mm-hmm. And I feel like the biggest indication of that is if you go watch the Sonic 06 reveal teaser, where Sonic runs through all the robots and then goes supersonic at the end. Just how that's presented, and they had the balls, the fucking cojones, to call it Sonic the Hedgehog.
Yeah.
You can tell, and like I've looked into it so much because it's fascinating. There was such energy going into Sonic 06. They're like, yes, we're gonna do every single thing people want. We're gonna correct all the things, and then just they had it. I actually legitimately do believe they would have been on track, but lead designer leaves because the team is split because the storybook series has to work on. So because the Wii is coming out. So once again, Nintendo. Nintendo, for some reason, it's just saying that, I've just realised Nintendo's the reason we got Sonic Boom and the 3 exclusive Wii games, which includes Lost World, and also Sonic 06. Part of me is legit thinking Nintendo's not over it yet. Nintendo's like really still beefing. It's like sabotage, because they're at every...
They're playing the long game.
They're at every fucking major point in history, man. It's not a joke. I'm not fucking joking. It's legit. It's like they're at every single major point in history of this shit. Like the team is split, and one has to go work on Sonic on the Black Knight, and the Yuji Naka team lead is sent there, not on Sonic the Hedgehog, his passion project. So that is directionless, and they've also only got to get it made in a year. You see how that ended up like that. So that is, and we also get the Storybook series, which again just as many problems with that, despite having a good idea for a spin-off franchise. It's just you shouldn't have done those two at the same time. Get your fucking reboot out fast, or your soft reboot. So that is kind of that initial decision, that initial blow, has changed how Sega interacts with the fan base. Because before they're like, oh, we'll give Shadow the Hedgehog a gun, because they listen to fans. So they've always kind of had an
Yeah.
ear out for what the youth wants or what the fan base wants. But after Sonic 06 is where it became a little, oh, we'll help you out, to, okay, how do we do this? But without admitting that. And I think that's been the problem, is because they're not that honest with it. It's how you lead to the division of the fan base, the division of the franchise, where they're listening to popular crowds, like your pro Jareds and such,
Right.
who don't
Yeah.
necessarily get what Sonic is.
Yeah. I'm sorry, pro Jared.
I know,
Yeah.
I know. I just like to dig on him because
That's fair.
after his thing came out in Sonic Adventure 2, everyone started shitting on that, and karma's a bitch.
Um, and it's funny. As much as they are hard to play, I can't hate Sonic 06. It gave me Silver. I fucking love Silver the Hedgehog. He's one of my favorite characters, especially the way that Ian Flynn handles him in the comics, where he's just a goddamn fucking cinnamon roll. I love him. Shadow being a fucking edgelord who likes motorcycles just because they're cool, not because he needs them. Like, that's something that has just been adopted into fanon by a lot of people. And so, like, when they go balls to the wall, even when they fucking swing and a miss, there's usually something in there that's really charming or fun to grab a hold of. It's just unfortunate we can't marry that to actual good game design, or at least it we've had trouble doing that. So where they go from here, I just don't know. I feel like Forces, the reveal trailer for Forces, like, they were really going for that double threat with like Forces and Mania. They're like, we're gonna 1-2 punch. Like, Mania's gonna come out, blow your fucking minds. Forces is gonna come out, people are gonna love it. Mania came out and blew everyone's minds, but then Forces has only gotten worse with age. And so I don't know. The ball's in their court, and it's, I don't know, man. It's been frustrating being a Sonic fan the last few years, because you're right. Really, the only thing I've had to go to has been the IDW comics and things like that, and hopefully those just continue to get better and better. I mean, I hope. But I don't know. It's one of those things. I can only spin my wheels so long before I'm just like, Sega, do something, anything.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough because right now it feels like there's been enough of a gap. How many years has it been since Forces came out?
Oh, it came out in 2017, but it came out at the very tail end of 2017, so it's basically been 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
But like, Sega, to their credit, they are starting to kind of realize, like, oh, hey, people are into this Yakuza thing we've got. Like, maybe we've got other franchises that people like besides just Sonic. And so, I'm glad for them. I'm glad that Sega is finding success in other things. So maybe they don't feel like they have to. I mean, if they want to actually come out and do a proper Golden Axe reboot, I'm here for it. So, like, I'm glad that Sega at least they don't have to 100% rely on Sonic. But at the same time, I mean, he's their bread and butter. He's their baby. I don't think Sega wants to leave Sonic by the wayside. If they wanted that, the social media wouldn't be such the Sonic social media, that energy. They just bring it to the games. They clearly get how much people love this franchise. But I think they were probably expecting Forces to do better than it did. So I don't really know. I don't know what they're going to do.
Yeah, I mean, it's just one of those things.
I mean, the episode Shadow DLC was cool, just because people, like, yes, we've been wanting to play as other characters for a while now, Sega, so thank you.
And that's so funny. That's extra funny as well, just because it's not even a different character. It's literally just a model swap, and people were happy with that. I don't think Sega understands how easy it would be to please. They're just asking for just have a Tails and a Knuckles, and they just give them a fly and a glide feature. Modders have done it. We don't need different gameplay styles like the adventure games. Those would be nice if you do them right, but we're just asking for classic games as Sonic, but with different abilities. That's how you make different characters in this franchise.
Yeah, I've always said that. I mean, like, you look back at Sonic 3 and Knuckles, you could play as basically three different characters, and they all pretty much traverse the world in the same way, but there were unique things about each one that made it a slightly different experience. And I think that would be fine. Look, would I be totally fine with Sonic having the super high speed, levels while Knuckles does the more, down and dirty punch in and exploring? Like, sure, why not? Like, I would totally love that. But if you can't make that work, then I'm fine with just being able to play as Knuckles or Amy or whatever, and just me the same kind of abilities that Sonic has, but just switch it up in a way that allows me to explore more of the universe, things like that. I think Sonic's at a point. What I would like to see personally is like a total. See, I'm hesitant to say it. I want to see them get away from the boost formula. Like, I want to see something new. I want to see, it's Sonic, but it's like an open world game or something like that. Like, I want to see them try something new. But at the same time, I'm hesitant because every time they do that, it sucks. So
the track record isn't there. I think new should also mean new talent. I love Sonic Team,
for sure.
But I think it's plainly for most people on the outside, and I think even Sega must know this because they're letting other people do Mania. The old guard just should be gone. It's not necessarily as a bad thing, and not to let people lose their jobs, but like move on to different projects and let some fresh blood actually come with the franchise, like you guys were, right? Handing off the torch from the classic game developers. Yeah. I think that's the way to go. I think we've been with this version of Sonic for a decade now, which is crazy.
I know, yeah.
If you count the same for the adventure games, that lasted less. We've been with this period of Sonic longer than Adventure 1 to 06, which is insane.
But and you kind of have to ask yourself, that's been the case, but what era had the bigger impact on people's
exactly. And like the quantity of games, and obviously game development has changed over those years, but it does feel a lot sparser despite being longer. Like it feels like much less has happened. So I would like that to go. I would like the influx of fans that the movie's going to create, and any sequels to that movie. I hope also, because we've kind of left that out, but we talked about, you and Ian did a great review of the Sonic movie as is, so I don't want to just focus on that. But like the Sonic 2, lean more into the characters, ditch the cop, please.
God,
no more cops. And maybe, I don't know. I would also really like to see a new Sonic animated series, like the new TMNT, or like the era of She-Ra we're in right now is like. Feels perfect for a good Sonic show.
And go fucking stylish with it. Go anime with it.
Yeah,
like
on.
I remember seeing the like Sonic Riders opening cutscenes and just being like, this makes my eyes tear up in happiness. Like I've seen some of those fight scenes from the new TMNT show. I've seen some of the fight scenes from, I think it's like Owl House. I'm like, there are some fucking, like, you put Sonic in that, you give us some like anime ass fight scenes, you give us like that crazy, because you look at the anime opening to Sonic Boom, or you look at the Sonic OVA movie that Ian and I reviewed, there's so much glorious animation, action, style potential here. And the fact that you're watching a blue anthropomorphic hedgehog just sort of, it doesn't register as silly or stupid to you because it knows what it is, and it plays it straight even while being ridiculous, and it just makes you love how fucking awesome it is. We've missed that. We've lost it. I mean, I want to get back to that point in something other than the comics. And I mean, the comics can stay that way, but hopefully evolve a little bit more. I would love to see a new animated series that, while Sonic Boom is certainly very fun, I would like to see something that's different and kind of goes back to that stylish, cool action that I think Sonic really excels at.
Mm-hmm. I would kill for like they were doing for a while with Mickey Mouse. They just released short animated shorts of just like, or even Sonic Mania Adventures. Just make that a TV show.
Mm-hmm.
Those were fun. You don't even need a voice cast. But take all the money you'd do for voice actors and just put it into animation. And just make it 5-minute blocks before another TV show or 20-minute blocks. And it's just fucking silent. Sonic the Hedgehog comedy action. Like you can that gets a good balance as well because it's kids can watch that. I've done that with like my little cousin and my little brother. I just put on Sonic Mania Adventures, and you think, oh no talking. Does the kids go? You're dealing with bright primary coloured anthropomorphic characters in silly faces. They're all right. They're into it. Like you don't need to have the characters talking constantly to engage it. In fact, that would bore a kid more sometimes, I found, than if you just let the characters move and emote and act. That primal language is what appeals to young generations more. It's perfect for Sonic, because his character design is the thing about him that will never stop being perfect. It's the thing that's kept him alive all these years. It's just how perfect his design is. Lean into it.
Yep. For sure. I agree.
Well, unless you've got anything more to add, I think that wraps us up.
Yeah, I think so. Futures.
Not uncertain,
it's at least,
yeah.
Yeah, it's a little uncertain. It's open, certainly. And I think at least the comics will at least stay consistent, if nothing else. Hopefully they get better, but if they at least stay consistent, I'll at least continue to be fairly happy with that. I mean, I'd like to see them go farther, like you said. In terms of the games, I mean, we'll see. It's until Sega announces something, it's hard to say.
And hopefully that'll be soon, so we can have another addendum video where this immediately gets put out of date. Where Sega releases Lost World 2.
Well, I'm just kind of wondering if, because Sonic's most recent birthday was 29, and so I mean, if they're currently developing something for his 30th, which they could be, they've got about another year to finish it up and market for it. So I'm kind of curious if that's what they're planning to do or not.
Yeah, and I'd be hyped if they just spent 4 years working on an adventure remake where they just go for and redefine, take that blueprint and do what like Odyssey did to Super Mario 64. Holy shit, man.
Yeah, I mean, going back to the adventure games is, I mean, I agree with some of the YouTube reviewers who have gone back to those games and been like, they don't always hold up as much as we want them to in the gameplay department. I'm not saying I don't get that. They can be a little bit jank at times, especially the first one. But the what's there can be built upon. You take the movement and controls of Sonic from Adventure 2, you refine that to a fine point. We could be back, boys. But we'll see.
We'll see. Other thing we'll see is we need a review topic for next week.
Oh, fuck. I didn't think about that.
Yep. No one ever does.
Let me think about this for like 2 seconds. Oh, I know. We are going to. Do you have access to? Does it matter? Because there's a movie I just want to make sure you have access to it.
Let me just say it.
I want to review a Studio Ghibli film.
Which one?
Porco Rosso.
Let's do it.
Yes, Porco Rosso, Studio Ghibli film starring fucking Michael Keaton. If you have HBO Max, it is on there, and we're gonna review it.
I'm all down. Let's do it. All right, you guys can look forward to that next week. Until then, we have been your Geeky gentlemen. I am the champion of the oppressed.
I'm the Sonic erotica lover.
And we will be discussing things pretty fast, huh?